this problem, I have this problem, what do I take? And they wanted me to give them like maybe 5 or 10. I mean, people would come in and they'd be on like 30 supplements a day and they wanted more because it made them, it was like a safety blanket, right? Or they kind of maybe had the belief like, my body can't function unless I'm giving it this, and this, it's almost like they don't have any trust in their body. It's like they need supplements for everything. Now, yes, there is a place for supplementation, of course, but when you can't be okay without taking like 30 supplements in a day, we need to step back and examine that.
Welcome to Resolve IBS and IBD Naturally. I'm Courtney Cowie, a nutrition therapy and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. If you are struggling with the symptoms of IBS or IBD and want to get to the root cause of your symptoms so you can take back your health through a whole person approach, this podcast is for you. Just a disclaimer that the information I'm presenting in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. You should always consult a qualified practitioner before making any changes to your health or medical regimen. That being said, let's get on with the show. Okay, let's talk about, because you were bringing up the carnivore diets. It's like, oh, we're going to go there. We're going to go there. So Abby and I have been doing some regular walks and they've been super duper fun. And one of the topics we kind of organically started just like riffing on one day is just a common pitfall that we see a lot of people fall into. And we kind of sort of identified it as like these two extremes of a spectrum. And so one extreme, which Abby started to kind of mention, is people who are very much like wanting to be empowered, which is great. Like that mindset is great, but then they go and do all the like research on their own and they're trying to piece the solution together on their own. And they decide, okay, it's the carnivore diet, for example, right? It could be any diet, pick your poison, right? Like, but the carnivore diet is the answer. And so they launch into this extremely restrictive diet and then feel better, which, okay, great, that's a win. But the problem that presents now is anytime they try to go back to a more expansive diet, the symptoms come back and they struggle, right? And so it becomes this long-term, super restricted diet, which, as we were having this conversation, definitely rose a lot of concerns around, that is going to have long-term implications on having enough carbohydrate to like feed the metabolism and thyroid health and all of the things, right? And so not to mention, it's not really getting at like the deeper root causes. So I want you to speak on just kind of what you've seen of people in that realm, Abby.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it can be like part of a therapeutic plan, right? And that's where the challenge comes in, is there's so much information out there, and where I feel like we're always, we try to do our own research and we're wading through information and, what this person is saying and that expert is saying and this and that. So I know that it can be incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
But as you're doing that, so coming up with a plan, right, that addresses all of the different areas. Because the thing about these diets, like, yes, they're therapeutic diets, they can be very healing. But if you've got, say, like an underlying gut infection and you go on one of these elimination diets, you're not actually fixing the root cause. We might not actually need to go in and naturally treat what's happening in the gut. And so you're going to feel better on the diet because you've eliminated, some of the triggers, let's say. But then, to your point, when you add things back in, your body doesn't like it. You get symptoms again. And that's really your body saying like, hey, we didn't actually fix this. We're just managing it. Like all those years when I didn't eat until I was all the way full, like I only ate until I was 75% full, or, I would eat small, frequent meals throughout the day. It managed it to a degree, but I didn't actually fix anything. And it wasn't until I started working on my digestion and bringing in some digestive support and, enzymes and stomach acid, which was right for me, that I actually started to be able to like eat a full meal and not have any issues. Right. And I didn't have to eat all day long. I could just eat at meal times and that was it. So it's so much more than just doing an elimination diet. And that's where like working with someone like Courtney or like myself or someone who's literate in this, we actually help you figure out what is going on that's driving this need for you to be on a diet like that. And what can we do to bring your body back into a state of balance so that you don't have to be on something so restrictive for the rest of your life. And the other thing I just want to say, when people go on, like say the FODMAP diet or something like that, when they just get really restrictive and they have to eliminate all these foods because they're getting triggered by them. It can be, especially if they're on it for too long, because you're only supposed to be on that for a few months and then you're supposed to start adding things back in. I've seen clients in the past that they, of their own accord, went on a diet like that for years. And then suddenly their body can't tolerate anything. And they're down to like three foods and nothing else, even things that they should be able to handle, they can't. And so that just creates a big problem. So that's where you want to make sure if you're really having health issues, you want to make sure that you're working with someone that can really like dig deep and figure out what those other underlying issues are. Because yes, the diet is a really important piece, but it's not the only piece. There's other things that we need to look at as well because you don't want to get stuck in that like now I can only ever be on this restrictive diet forever because when you try and go off of it, the problems are still going to be there.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I actually did like an entire podcast episode on like why you don't want to be on the cycle of food sensitivity tests. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you know this too, Abby, but there's like a lot of like natural clinics, it's called functional clinics, right, around our area locally here. Because Abby and I actually live very close to one another, like physically speaking. We
Yes.
probably didn't mention that, but that's like a factoid I'll put
We're
out there. So
almost neighbors, one
we're
neighborhood
almost
over.
neighbors, which is so cool.
I
So
love
we're
it.
very, yeah, we're very familiar with kind of like the players in our area that, kind of would tend to look at helping similar types of people that we serve. But and we'll get into this in just a second, but a lot of times what I've seen as a huge shortcoming with those facilities is that if they do anything nutritionally related, it's a food sensitivity test. And so what they're handing these people is like a green, yellow, red, color coded list of foods. And it's like all the client or the patient is getting walking out the doors. Okay, here's your list of foods.
Yeah.
Just focus on the
Yeah.
green
Oh
and
my
avoid the
God.
yellow. And it's
Yeah.
insane. And so then they'll
I
do
see
that.
that
And
all the time. And then
yeah,
I like the point that I want to make, and you're probably about to make this point,
yeah,
is that some of those tests, depending on like, what company you're using to run the test or whatever, some of those will flag every food that you've been eating just because you've been eating it regularly. Like, so say you're eating, I don't know, let's just use green beans, for example. Say you're
yeah,
someone who loves green beans, you're eating green beans all the time. You might not actually have a sensitivity, but because you've been eating green beans all the time, some of those tests will flag it. And then suddenly you think, oh, I can't have this because it came up in the yellow or it came up in the red. And if you're not getting the proper education, you might walk out of there with a whole list of foods that they only came up because you've been eating them, not because you actually have a sensitivity. So I feel like that gets really restrictive really fast. You have to be careful with that.
it definitely does. And depending on the testing technology, the reason, well, there's a lot of reasons I don't like doing those types of tests, but another big one is that, especially if it's just IgG, IgA
Hmm.
antibodies, that's like whole food protein. And so, like, it can be erroneous, positively speaking, but also in my opinion, there's other components of foods that can be antigenic or not well tolerated. So, yes, you might get this list of foods, but that's not for sure the complete list of foods that you might be sensitive to. And then of the ones that
Yeah.
you're saying you're not sensitive to, you don't really know if those are truly sensitivities or not, right? Like
Right.
it's just very difficult to, I think, get a full picture of what might or might not be going on. But the bigger problem with those tests is it becomes this ongoing, never ending cycle because you follow the first, regimen for what, 90 days, 120 days, and then you go
Hmm.
back in to see this practitioner who gave you this
Hmm.
test and they're like, "Well,
Hmm.
time to retest." You
Yeah.
walk out the door with another list. It's
Yeah.
a different list. It was like,
There's
and
always going to be something.
there's always going to be something, Abby,
Yeah.
and none of this is looking at, okay, what's your digestive function like, right?
Right.
Because we know if we're not producing stomach acid, pancreatic enzymes, or quality bile, automatically that's going to set the stage for food sensitivity. So
Yeah,
that's like,
absolutely. And it blows my mind that, a lot of these clinics are not, they're kind of skipping the basics, like you
yeah,
said. Like
yeah,
stomach acid is like the first thing that I start thinking about when someone comes to me and they're having issues. I'm like, well, are you digesting? Are you absorbing? Are you making stomach acid? Are you making enzymes? Do you have a
exactly,
gallbladder? Are you making and storing and concentrating bile appropriately, which is needed for fat metabolism? Like
exactly.
80% of women over 40 aren't. And that's a huge piece in why they're not able to lose weight because they can't metabolize fat properly. So it's like, we can't forget. And I love that you focus on this so much because I'm like, we're getting so advanced and we have this testing and that testing and genetics and da da da. We can't forget to go back to the basics
Basics.
and look at those first.
Exactly, Abby. No, and it's so true. And I just am like finishing up the first 3 months with a client who saw a functional practitioner and that lady, I believe, was kind of like some of these folks around here we're talking about that do like more blood work and then a food sensitivity test. That's as far as it goes. And she's like, yeah, this person did all this genetic, investigation, and I have this gene mutation and that. And I'm just like, that doesn't matter to me.
What do
I
you
mean,
do with that? Like, what does the
yeah,
person do with that? You do all the, and
yeah,
I'm not saying don't do it if you want to do it. Like, yeah,
right.
testing is empowering. However,
It's
that's
not
the key. It
actionable.
should be empowering. If you just spent
Yeah,
thousands of dollars on testing and you don't walk out of there with a solid, sustainable plan of how you're actually going to get better,
it doesn't make sense.
it's not serving you, right? How is it serving you?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And there's got to be, in my opinion, some sort of like start and finish to the plan based on the testing
I'm
you run.
glad you
Not
said
like,
that. That's the other thing because it's so easy. Like I mean, we have to remember, these are businesses, right? And yes, of course, what is the goal of a business? You want to be sustainable, you want to make money, but at the same time, you do not want to get on the carousel
no.
that you can't get off where oh, I need this testing again and now it's this and then you need that. You know what I mean? You want to have an end in sight. You know?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why I feel like a more holistic approach, like, does run tests. The tests that they're running makes sense. They're going to have data points that correlate, and then
Mhm.
those data points correlate to the struggle the person's having. So that's
Yeah,
why you picked those specific tests.
yeah,
Not like the
exactly.
same, like
Yeah,
every 10 people walking into the clinic are getting the exact same testing. We kind of talked
right.
about this piece too, which
Yes,
to me
yes,
is mind blowing because it's like, well, what if one person has a hormone issue predominantly and the other has like chronic constipation? Are you
yeah.
telling me you're going to run the same two tests on those people? Like, that's insane to
Exactly.
me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It
So
should be tailored to the individual.
right, right, right. So, like, I think not only just looking at digestive function, which is a huge one I see wonky all the time on functional stool testing, but then running like a credible functional stool test that will actually show, like, do we have some hidden gut bugs that might be
Mhm.
contributing to
Mhm.
why you were having the bloating or the constipation or the diarrhea in the first place? Because, yeah, to the extent we don't do something about that, I don't care which foods you add in or take out, like, that problem isn't going
Yeah,
away.
you're always going to be, you're going to have this missing piece, right? If that's going
Yeah,
on for you. And those functional stool tests are amazing. You get so much information from them. It's
yeah,
literally life-changing. It
for
can
sure.
walk you out of some really awful health problems and back into health. And there will be an end in sight where suddenly, all these things that you couldn't tolerate, a lot of things you're able to add back in because then, you're becoming more robust. You can digest, you can handle it. We should be able to eat pretty much almost anything as humans. And we shouldn't be feeling miserable and dying. Now, I don't mean the artificial junk that's out there that's full of chemicals and things like that. But as far as real whole food goes, regardless
Mhm.
of whatever, your preference or your diet ideology is, we should be able to digest natural whole foods of any type without being uncomfortable and having problems. So if we can't, we need to dig deeper and dive deeper into why is that?
Exactly. No, I agree 100%. And that being said, it's possible that some people, just because of lots of rounds of antibiotics or other insults they've had over their lifetime, may never fully be able to handle every single food out
Yeah,
there.
yeah, and that's
But
true, of course.
yeah,
But
but
just
our
as a kind of a general rule,
as a general rule, in an optimal situation, let's
yeah,
just say if we were to go back in time 100 years ago,
yeah,
before we had so many widespread medication prescriptions and people had all of the, I mean, we could go to the level of even just Wi-Fi radiation on the body, like all the different
or
insults that we
the
have.
environment being less toxic. They weren't, there wasn't this
Yeah.
barrage of like endocrine disrupting chemicals and toxins that, that we're all
Yeah.
exposed to. Humans were a lot more robust.
They were, and the microbiome was more resilient, I would say, and
Mhm,
probably more diverse in some
mhm.
ways too, because I think
Yep.
research has kind of pointed to the fact that if you look at just healthier control populations, whether these are people still living in like Africa that are a little bit more remote or whatnot,
Hmm.
they have very diverse microbiomes, even
Yes.
though these different populations are eating different diets. The
Yep.
common thread is they've had less like Western influence breakdown in their lives, and
Yeah,
then
for
they've
sure.
stayed pretty true to their native diet that it's
Yeah.
been for many, many years. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, it's very hard because I think we see a lot in our world, just people coming in with a state of breakdown that's already pretty significant. And now some people worse than others, but it can be a very much an intensive kind of like path of work that these folks have to go through. But I think, again, just to kind of bring this back to the main point that we're trying to make, it's not going to be just through testing. It's not going to be just through supplements. Like, we do have to work with diet pretty hard. We also have to ask a lot of questions around what are other sources of stressors for you and what are some other things that might be going on that are
Mhm.
piling on and making it hard for your body to naturally regain health on its own
Oh
because
yeah, absolutely. Because like just going back to, stress and the nervous system and, fight or flight, that's, kind of what everyone's heard, right? So there's like the two, to make it real simple, because that's how I like things. There's like those two main branches of the nervous system, right? There's like the fight or flight and there's the rest and digest. Right. And, we're supposed to be able to switch back and forth between both. We need both to be healthy. We need one to react and mount a response. And then we're supposed to switch back in the other one. And that way we can calm down, we can rest, our body can repair, right? But in our modern world, so often we're stuck in that fight or flight, fight or flight, fight or flight. And we adapt to that. Like I get so many women coming in and they've got all these issues going on. And I'm like, what's your stress level? And they're like, I'm not really that stressed. I'm not stressed. And I'm like, I think you are. You just don't realize how stressed you are because you've been living this way for so long. Right. So I'm always telling people like your body's main priorities might not be the same as yours because your body's main priorities are going to be like safety and survival. That's what your body cares about. And
Mhm.
if you're not meeting those needs of safety and survival, it is not going to care that you want to lose weight or that you want nicer skin or that you want to get pregnant or whatever it is. If you're not meeting those very basic needs, like going back to, like we were saying, back to the basics, back to those primal needs, those have to be satisfied first. So if you're living in a state of stress and like, I can never calm down, I'm running here, I'm running there, chicken with the head cut off, your hormones are not going to be balanced, right? Because your body is more concerned with survival than it is with actually thriving. So there's a big paradox there is we can't thrive when we're in survival mode. We're
Right,
literally not built that way. So we
right.
have to learn how to bring ourselves back into thrive mode versus survive mode. And all the things, the gut can't heal, the hormones can't balance. If you have a chronic disease and you're living in constant fight or flight, it's not going to get better until you start teaching your body and your nervous system how to feel safe. And that's very basic, but it's also very crucial.
It is. I agree. And that's actually a big piece of like my process I take clients through too, because I'm trained in heart math and I kind of explain to them like it's a simple tool, but it works. It might not be the full kit and caboodle for you, but it's going to get you started, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
and I think just, whether the person listening identifies more as a DIY Debbie type, right? We laughed about this term when we were on our walk, but
Yes.
just to clarify, the DIY Debbie type is sort of the persona who very much wants to fix it on their own, very much wants to like go down the rabbit hole and research all the diets and okay, I'm going to do carnivore and that'll be it. And then start the plan and they often do get some results. But then the hang up becomes you get so far and then what, right?
Yeah.
Because this is often what I see. People will say, like, well, I tried this and it worked for a bit, but then I got stuck. Or
Yep.
then
Yep.
life got in the way and all these stressors came up, and then I couldn't do this diet anymore. And I think what we fail to realize is that to really have success, I mean, even as practitioners, Abby, like, if I were going to go have, like, let's say I had to go work on my health, right, for 3, 6 months.
Mm.
I would much rather even have someone else mentoring and like guiding me than trying to, and we know a lot, right? Like
Yeah.
we really know all the things. But I think what I'm trying to say is like often the DIY Debbie types don't see their own blind spots and also
Mhm.
still have a lot of knowledge gaps
Yeah.
and not able to necessarily see all the pieces of the puzzle and where things
Mhm.
aren't aligning to get
Yeah.
them where they want to go with
Yeah.
their health goals, right?
Yeah. Because we're not meant to do it all alone.
No.
Ladies, newsflash. We are not meant to do it all alone in any area of life, right?
Yeah.
So I think finding, like a coach needs a coach, a doctor needs a doctor, a trainer needs a trainer. I mean, when it comes to yourself, it's important to work with an expert that can help you, like you said, identify your own blind spots, because that's exactly what they are for us. So even us as licensed practitioners, if
Yeah.
I'm working on certain areas of my health, I'm going to find an expert in their field to make sure that they can guide me through maybe what I don't know or what I haven't connected for my own self. And that's how it is in life. And that's why I'm so passionate about creating like a community of women because we all have our own areas of expertise and we can share our knowledge and experiences with each other because we're not meant to do everything all by ourselves. It just doesn't work
Oh,
that way.
For
Doesn't
sure.
have to
No,
be like that.
absolutely. Yeah. And I love to even just have people that compliment what I do just in the hopper that, if somebody's really struggling in an area that I know I'm not skilled as much as I need to be to help them, it's like, hey, I need to connect you with this person over here
Mhm.
because I think that this stressor that's going on is continuing to impact your physical health. And that's where we're kind of stuck right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's. Are you struggling with chronic diarrhea or constipation and have been told by your doctor that there's either nothing wrong or that you're going to need to take a med for the rest of your life to control symptoms? What if there was another way? A way that empowered you to take back your health through a smart nutritional strategy and through running the right testing to identify true root causes. If you are ready to say yes to self empowerment and to starting the journey to real improvement in your gut health, click the link to grab my free e-guide. So yeah, so that's like the DIY Debbie extreme, and then we have the fix it fast Fran extreme, right? Which is
Nicknames.
we kind of touched on that, and that's the person that just is like desperate. They watch the ad on TV, or they see the Google ad pop up, and it's like the local functional medicine doctor clinic, right?
Mhm.
And oh, this is
Mhm.
what I want because my doctor's failed me, and
Yep.
this will be like the real deal, and it's all natural, and it will be so much
Mhm.
better than the drugs. And then they go, and it looks like that at first blush, but really, really, what it is, in my opinion, is conventional medicine repackaged with a functional
Mhm.
bow on top, right?
Yeah.
And often it's a practitioner, often licensed practitioner, nothing wrong with that. I would love to have one of those people to like collaborate with because
Mhm.
there's times
Yeah.
my clients need to use scripts. But point being, they're often that conventional foundation is still very much, I
They're
would say,
using the
driving.
same model.
They're
So
using
it's
the
like
same
rather than
model.
coming in and writing a prescription for a
Yeah,
medication,
yeah,
you're coming in and they're just giving you like a natural supplement instead. And it can be
yeah,
challenging because I feel like we're taught to expect that as a society, right? Like I
yeah.
expect if I go into a doctor, whether it's a naturopath or a regular doctor, I expect I will be given something, right? Some type of
Yes.
prescription. Give me a pill for my ill, give me a supplement for my problem. I want to know what's going to fix this. I just want to take something. Like we're very much that type of society. So, I feel like, that kind of just gets reinforced, but it's unfortunate because then we're missing out on all the other aspects of the holistic functional side that we
Yeah.
need to truly heal. It's so much more than just, well, what can I take for this?
Exactly. Yeah. And you could probably talk on like even a job you've had in that vein that was like, a good example of that too,
Oh yeah,
Abby.
absolutely. I would see that all the time because I used to work for a retail company that sold supplements and they sold thousands of supplements and they had lots of really good quality stuff. I mean, there was some really nice stuff in there and there was definitely some things that worked and made a huge difference in people's lives. But the hard thing for me as a practitioner was people would come in and they're like, what do I take? I have this problem. I have this problem. What do I take? And they wanted me to give them like maybe 5 or 10. I mean, people would come in and they'd be on like 30 supplements a day and they wanted more because it made them, it was like a safety blanket, right? Or they kind of maybe had the belief like, my body can't function unless I'm giving it this, and this. It's almost like they don't have any trust in their body. It's like they need supplements for everything. Now, yes, there is a place for supplementation, of course. Like, are there a few supplements that I would never do without? Magnesium, vitamin D3 and K2, trace minerals. I mean, things like that I'm always doing on a daily basis. But when you can't be okay without taking like 30 supplements in a day, we need to step back and examine that. So that for me was challenging because, there was the expectations from the companies of we need to sell this, but that also can go against your integrity as a practitioner. You want people to get better. You just don't want them to be like, in this cyclical carousel kind of thing. So that was a little challenging. And then not having the space or the time or the avenue to investigate all the other things. So it was just like, I have this problem. What's the pill? What's the supplement? I'm like, well, we really should do some deeper investigation here before I just go ahead and tell you to take a bunch of things.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. And I've seen actually in cases like that, if the person sits down with me and I can tell because I bring in this huge bag of supplements or, they've written on my intake form, like, I ran out of space. I couldn't keep going with all the supplements. I'm just like, oh my God. So then essentially after I present them their entire health overview in depth, and I'm connecting, okay, these are the foundational imbalances I'm seeing. This is how they align with your symptoms. Based on what I'm seeing going on with you, these are the specific functional tests I recommend we go get. And then I present them with, and this is what your investment is going to be over 3 months.
Mm.
Sometimes they're like, well, that's a lot of money. And I'm like, it is a lot of money, but so are those 30 supplements you're
Yeah,
taking every single
exactly.
month,
Yeah.
endlessly,
Yeah.
endlessly. And how much
Yeah.
is that costing you over a year, 2 years,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
there's no end to that game. And it's
No,
like,
there's not.
versus if you work with me, I'm not, yes, I will use some supplements, but strategically and for
Right.
a short
Right.
purpose for some of
Yeah.
this too, because
Yeah.
often we're going after hidden gut stuff or whatnot, right? So it's like, and you're now going to learn how to sustain your health on your own, hopefully
Exactly.
through diet. So you're
Yeah.
less dependent on all
Yeah.
this stuff. Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
my God,
That is our goal is,
yeah,
when you come and work with us, we don't want you to just be hooked on supplements or even hooked on us forever. Like we want to get you through that critical period and then teach you like how to go off and thrive where you have enough knowledge, you have enough trust in your own body to make good decisions that you don't constantly need us forever. We want you to go off and spread your own health wings, right?
exactly, Abby. Yeah. And then the other funny thought that always comes up with like the 2030 supplement person is like, do you know how well you're digesting though? Because like you're not
I
breaking
know.
that
And
stuff
no
down.
shade, Courtney, because I was that person at one point. I was
I'm
that person. So
sure. I'm
absolutely
sure.
no shade. I was completely that person. But, I have explained to a lot of people, like, say someone's on 30 supplements, but nothing for digestion, and they're having digestive issues. And better yet, maybe they're also on like an acid blocker, like omeprazole.
Oh
I'm
God.
like, hey, I'm sorry to say, but I think this is probably all getting wasted because you're probably not absorbing any of it.
Exactly.
So we really need to go back and work on that first because it's not just what you eat or what you take, right? It's what you actually absorb.
Exactly. Yeah, so foundational. And yeah, we totally align there because I think it's again, and what blows my mind is a lot of these like brick and mortar standalone, conventional 2.0 rebranded as functional practices, there isn't that level of thinking. And I don't know if it's because just the training doesn't go that foundational or that deep. I don't know what the disconnect is, Abby, but the other thing I've seen beyond just running the same blood work and the same food sensitivity test over and over and over on every single person is the other type of standalone where it's like, well, I'm now going to muscle test you every time you
Oh
come.
my God.
I'm
Yes.
going to put
And
a
like no
supplement.
shade to that either. I mean, I do
Yeah.
use muscle testing. But I have definitely had experiences where you're going to see a practitioner and every single time you muscle test for like 20 different things.
Yeah.
And hey, you muscle tested that you need to take 30 of these pills in a day. So I want you to take two every hour or whatever, insane thing it is. And that's just
I hope
not
it's not
sustainable.
B vitamins or something.
I've really jacked up my system trying to follow advice like that. So
Yeah.
while I'm definitely not against muscle testing, like, balance in all things, right? Moderation in all
Yeah.
things, because it can be, and we were talking about this on one of our walks. Like, here's the thing. Here's what I have to say about that. Muscle testing is great. However, you have to keep in mind your body is going to mount a response to anything that it is presented with. That is in our nature. Everything creates some type of signal or stimulus in our body, even just like sunlight, hearing a noise, smelling something, tasting a flavor, anything that our senses come into contact with. Our body has to mount a response to a certain degree. So if you're muscle testing and you're holding, for you guys, if you're not familiar with muscle testing, a lot of chiropractors do it, or, I feel like chiropractors are the ones that are
It's
most
mostly
well known for this.
thyroid. Yeah.
It's applied kinesiology. So like the way it would work for me is I would go in and they'd have me hold like capsules or a substance in my hand. So you're touching it. And then what you do is you actually push down and you test like your muscle strength, your muscle kind of reflexes, I guess you'd say. And
Mhm.
if the substance you're holding makes you a little stronger, it's good for you. This is really basic, and if it makes you go weak, it's bad for you. Like, for example, if I would hold like a candy bar or something sugary and they would push down on my arm, I'd actually be weaker than if I held like a good, healthy whole food, then I would go stronger. So it's really cool. But the thing is, like I was saying, remember that anything that you come in contact with, your body is going to mount a response. So that also kind of leads to the never ending carousel because anything that they put in your hand, your body is either going to have to say yes, no, or maybe so. So
Right.
you're always going to be on something. You're never going to be done.
Right, exactly. There's no like continuity thread is kind of what I've seen.
Mhm.
It's and again, our aim isn't to like throw chiropractors that do this under the bus or
Oh
folks in
yeah, no,
that
I think it's a great tool. I just think like we just always have to we always just have to keep those things in mind, right?
for sure. And then it does come back to like let's be real, like most of these practices have to make money to stay in
Mm,
business and it
mm.
is a pretty ingenious way to
Yeah,
keep, basically building an argument that you need to
yeah,
keep coming back and getting muscle tested. But the point is you're not teaching a man to fish, you're just fishing
yeah,
for him and
yeah,
there's this like
exactly.
endless cycle of
Yeah.
it, right?
And
So,
I think that's because I wanted to say something about like us getting out of touch with our own innate wisdom as women and as humans. And I think that's why we're so quick to discount the simple
yeah.
in our modern world where there's all this fancy testing and all these techniques and this and that. And yes, all those things are very exciting. And I'm not against any of them. I've done muscle testing, I've done genetic testing, I've done lots of other, like I'm not against any of that. But
Right.
it's don't ever get to a place where you can't trust your own wisdom, where you can't reconnect to the wisdom of your own body and sit with it like, does this feel right for me? And I think
Yeah.
that's why like in our Western society, we are so disconnected with our own intuition and our own wisdom. We live in a very like masculine, head focused, rational mind focused society. And we tend to downplay the importance of the feminine, which is the heart, the body, the wisdom. How does this make me feel? And, connecting things together. And so, yes, go out and do all the things, if you're interested in that, there's nothing wrong with that. But never forget that you you're the one who's living in your body. Your body is going to tell you if it likes something or not. Don't forget to
Sure.
tap into your own innate wisdom that you have and going back to those simple basic things that we all need as humans that we overlook,
Yeah.
like sunshine, grounding, feeling safe,
Mhm.
just the very basic things, stomach acid.
Right.
Put that on that list too. Like, just the very basic things. So if you're doing all this fancy stuff and you haven't addressed those basic things and you're not getting results, go back to the basics. Now, if you're doing the muscle testing or the fancy stuff and you have addressed those basic things and you just want to take it one step further, great, more power to you. Like, do it. But don't discount those basic primal needs that we all have as humans. The biggest, most profound truths are often the most simple. It's often the most simple things that we discount because they just seem like they wouldn't matter. Those are the things that actually matter the most.
For sure. And those are the things that often aren't getting reinforced or focused on
Because
enough.
they're not sexy and they're
No,
probably
they're
not
not.
expensive. Like going on outside and getting sunlight in the morning. So
Right.
key to regulate your circadian rhythm, but no one can charge for that. So we don't really hear how important that is.
Exactly. And I think this end of the spectrum we're talking about, this fix it fast Fran is opposite of DIY Debbie, right? Like DIY Debbie is really like, ooh, I want to do it all myself and nobody can help me and I'm gonna fix it myself. And the other is like, no, I need to outsource this and just entirely entrust someone to fix this for me as fast as
Yeah.
possible. And whatever
Yeah.
they say, I'll
Yeah.
just do it. And that's a lot of how our conventional medical system works. Like
Mhm.
people are not encouraged to ask questions or
Right.
question their doctor or
Oh, yeah,
you know,
definitely not.
yeah, listen to that voice that's like, ooh, he's already prescribing me like two acid lowering meds, and this
Mhm.
is like the first appointment. And we don't really know.
Yeah.
Nobody's scoped me. I'm not saying they should get scoped, but like there's a lot of just jumping to conclusions that happens
Yeah.
all the time in
Yeah.
conventional medicine. And I think people who are a little bit more in touch kind of feel like a but then I
Mhm.
think they feel like because there's just such a cultural push to like, don't question, just go
Yeah.
along,
Yeah. I don't
go
want to
with the
be
masses.
belligerent. And especially us as women, like
Yeah,
good girls do what they're told, right? Didn't we kind of
right,
all get that programming to a certain
right,
extent? Don't
right.
ask questions, be a good girl, don't make too much noise, don't make anyone uncomfortable. It's your job to regulate the emotions of everyone around you.
Right, right,
Right?
right.
And so men are often more encouraged to ask questions. They can be a little more aggressive. That's okay. Like, explain to me why this is a thing. But for women, we often feel like we don't have the right to be that, or we've not practiced being that. So it can feel very uncomfortable for us to feel like we're being aggressive or confrontational when we're really not. We're just being assertive.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so that is something that I'm also working on turning around in my own life and in the women in my community, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
That is so important.
Oh, for sure, Abby. And I think we're kind of also just talking too on the level of like, if you're out looking for someone to help, I mean, really the biggest quality you should be looking for, in my opinion, is like, do you resonate with that person? Do you
Yes.
feel like
Yes.
they're hearing you, they're
Does it
understanding
feel
you?
right in your
Yeah.
body? Is your body giving you a yes?
Yes, exactly, exactly. And I mean, just to kind of touch on the muscle testing piece a bit, like, I mean, even too, as an NTP, I was trained on lingual neural testing, which is a type of neurofeedback system, right? It's not muscle lock based testing, but taking a nutrient, putting it on the tongue, pressing into different reflex points. And I mean, it is a great tool to use. And I used it a lot the first several years I did this work. But I will tell you, I made mistakes with that. I'll just give you a quick example. Like if I was going to check, for example, like stomach acid potential, I could put like a low dose, stomach acid tablet on the tongue, press the stomach point. Is this like less painful? Yes, it's less painful. Okay, you need acid, right?
Mhm,
I had
mhm,
a few people where before I started doing functional testing, I put them on like, a good portion of HCl just to support their
mhm,
digestion. And then they sometimes felt better, but they would still continue to struggle with like a lower degree of the problem. And so it wasn't until I finally was like, maybe we run a stool test on you and check some things. And oh
mhm,
my God, Abby, like one of my ladies had high H. pylori the whole time, and I had been giving her stomach acid, which is
mhm,
for the listener, if you don't know, totally contraindicated. You can
mhm,
actually make the stomach lining more inflamed if you do that because of the way H. pylori is. It actually kind of almost like uses the acid to create more problems in the stomach,
mhm.
if you will.
Yeah, and it's
And
it's so hard because like ultimately that person will need more stomach acid, and that's
yes,
why the body is saying yes because
yes,
it ultimately will need that, but not in
yes,
that order. You have to go in and heal the H. pylori, heal that
yes,
gastric inflammation, and
yes,
then bring in the stomach acid. So
yes.
the body is saying yes because it knows it will need that, but
Need
it's like she wasn't ready because there was another step that you had to take before that.
That's exactly it. And that was the exact point I was going to make. And that's kind of, to me, the biggest limiting factor is you can check one thing against one thing,
Mhm,
but you don't know what
mhm.
else is going
Yeah,
on that might
yeah.
dictate whether you actually use that nutrient or not,
Yeah.
right?
So they're good tools, but that's just it. They're tools, they're not the entire toolbox.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of ranting a lot on this whole topic, but like I think our main objective is to just kind of take a bit of a like tough love approach with maybe some of the listeners out there who are on the whole, I want to figure out my health issue. I want to get to the root cause. You wouldn't be listening to this if this wasn't you. Like, I mean, let's be honest, right? Like
Yeah.
we love
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
this, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
not everybody's going to want to listen to gut health and hormone health. So
Right, exactly.
yeah, and I think sometimes like it's helpful just to get the other side of the coin and sort of look at yourself from this other perspective and be like, gosh, am I maybe trying to do this all on my own?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's where I'm blocking
Yeah.
myself and I
Yeah.
need to actually
And
reach out.
so much respect for those women, right? Like I applaud
Yeah.
you. If you've been digging in and doing research and trying to figure things out, you're on the right track. Like you've already
Yeah,
taken a huge important step. I absolutely applaud you. But you don't need to do it all on your own.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. And you're probably missing something too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's such a tough, I mean, just to kind of go down this track for a minute, like I've had a few people that I've done consults with and they weren't terribly unhealthy, but there were some things, right? There were some things and they're like, this bothers me that my fasting glucose is like 115. I know that's a
Hmm.
problem. And I'm like, yeah, that is
Yeah.
a problem.
Yeah.
But they're very, say like they're very active. They jog, they lift weights, they do all the things. They stretch at night, they
Yeah.
work on their sleep, they do
Yeah.
meditation during the like all the things, right, Abby? So the mindset is like, I already am doing everything.
Yeah.
What more could she possibly teach me? What
Yeah.
more could I possibly learn here? And that's the exact pitfall that this type of person falls into because
Yeah.
the truth is you don't know what you don't know until you let
Exactly.
someone else
You don't know what you
deeply
don't know.
skilled, yeah, like
Mhm.
audit what you're doing, right? Like, and
Yeah.
I sometimes use that term like maybe you've got diet dialed in perfectly. I don't know, but would there be any harm in letting me audit what you're doing? Like, just
Right.
literally
Right.
write it all out. Let me take a look at it because we don't know what we don't know. And you may
Mhm.
have done a lot of self study, listen to all the podcasts, but there's still likely things you don't know when it comes to nutrition or
Yeah.
some of these other areas of
Yeah.
health. And what potential could there be if you actually allowed someone to come in and support that?
Yeah.
Would that be worth, the investment over 3 months? Like
Absolutely.
if you could solve this issue
Mhm.
forever,
Right.
I
Right. So
think
you
it
don't have
would,
to keep
right?
living it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
So yeah, no, I mean, hopefully this is like a bit of a wake up call for some people, or just even if nothing else, gets the gears turning in the
Or
brain. And
permission, right?
yeah,
Permission to ask for help,
yeah.
permission to admit, hey, I don't need to know everything myself. And there's experts that can help me. And there's no shame in me, just saying, like, hey, I haven't been able to fix this. Like, can you help me?
100% Abby. And the other side of the coin being, if you're also going to the local functional medicine doc and feel like you've been on this conveyor belt and there's no end to that, and it's just the same testing over and over, or muscle testing over and over, I would start to question that too, right? Like
Hmm.
you definitely need to be empowered to check in with your own process. And I would almost say if you're not seeing significant process or progress within 6 months, something's not right there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And that's
I
such a good point too, because, there are the people out there that it's been 2 weeks and they're like, well, this isn't fixed. So clearly it's not working.
right,
And,
right.
that is not the way either. I mean, of course, you got to give the body time. My general rules, I tell people for most things, like do it for 3 months
Yeah.
and you should start to see results
Yep.
within 3 months. Might see
Yep.
some faster or slower depending on, what we're working on, what's going on, but 3 months is kind of a good general rule. Now, if it's chronic, if you've lived with an issue for years, let's say you've had an issue for 10 or 15 or 20 years of your life, it's probably going to take more than 3 months just to, fix it because
Mhm.
you've lived your way into it for so long, you got to live your way out of it. But to Courtney's point, if it's been 6 months, you're on a solid plan and you're not seeing any improvement,
Or it's
then you might be
questionable.
yeah,
Yeah.
then you might be missing something.
Exactly. No, I agree 100%. And yeah, there are definitely people, I have them in my, clientele as well that are quite complexly ill. They might have had toxic mold exposure
Mhm.
or, tested high for like Lyme co-infections or something like that. And truthfully, those processes can take a while to
Yeah,
fully heal,
yeah,
but those are the exceptions in my opinion,
yeah,
really.
yeah,
Or maybe people
exactly.
with really severe trauma where there's a lot of nervous system dysregulation that's at play,
Mhm.
that's like impacting
Mhm.
how their physical body is functioning. But generally, yeah, I mean, I think this is where we get either blinders on and we don't question, is the process we're going through like still working, or is, and you do have to give it time, just like you said,
Mhm.
Abby, right? Like I would say fairly at least 3 months too, especially if you're quite unwell,
Yeah,
if you've got a lot of gut stuff going on, that could take some time.
yeah.
But on the other hand, yeah, if you're over here trying to like read more books and well, this didn't work, now I'm going to try that. Like that's not good either. Like, sooner or later, you're going to drive yourself batty trying to
Mhm.
do that, or you're
Yeah,
going to outsource everything and then be led down a path that just has no end, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Good
So,
things to be mindful of for sure. We have to be our own advocates.
yeah, for sure. Well, cool. Well, I think this is a good place to kind of wrap up this conversation. Can you share with the listeners how they can connect with you? What's the best way to do that, Abby?
Yeah, absolutely. So the probably the easiest and best place is on my website, which is balancedhormonesvip.com. And like I mentioned, my free resources on there, my menu of services are on there, more about me and what I do. And then if you're on Facebook, I do have a free Facebook group for women. So I have my own private page, but then I created this free Facebook group for women. It's called Balanced Hormones Empowered Women, and I have a link to it on my website as well. And basically, what I do is I post every day and I kind of showcase, like, how do I implement the things that I'm teaching in my own life? And, like, for example, today I'm doing a 36-hour fast. So I'm posting on that. There's a few other women that are doing it with me. Some of them, it's the first time they're fasting that long. So they're like, hey, can you fast with me? I'm like, yeah, let's do it together. So, it's like a fun little community where you can learn and you can also interact with like-minded women. So I have my Facebook community. And then on my website, I also have a VIP version of that where I basically give you my framework. So women who work with me, it's really most often a combination of like losing weight, repairing the metabolism, getting toned, and balancing hormones. And those kind of all play in together. So in my VIP membership, I literally give you the framework for that, the diet, the lifestyle, and I like walk you through how to do that. And then there you're in an even more close-knit community of like-minded women who are like doing the work, and I am there to guide you along the way. So those are some options. You have the free options, the free Facebook group, or you can work with me and actually be in my VIP community.
Nice. And they can basically see both of those through your website, right?
Yep, everything's on the website, balancedhormonesvip.com.
Okay, perfect. So I definitely will link that so that's available for the listeners. And No, this was awesome. I am really happy we did this, and we're going to be doing more of these.
Yes, we are. So if you liked this, stay tuned because there will be more of these type of conversations.
Did you find this episode informative and helpful? I'd love to have you leave me a 5-star rating. Do you have questions about holistic approaches to optimizing gut health that you'd like to ask? Please leave your question or comment below, and I will be sure to address it personally or cover it in a future episode. Be sure to check the show notes for any resources mentioned in today's episode. See you next time.